Yeah, so we're gonna check out the Thunderbolt 3 or USB4 drive that you have.
Right. So this is the USB4 drive from Sabrent, and we're able to run in excess of 2,000 megabytes per second reads. The writes are slower because we're doing both, display out to the monitor and write into the drive at the same time. That's why you see a slower write performance as well. Plus, it's also a slower drive.
So what happens if you disconnect the display? Is it gonna get even faster, right?
Slightly faster, but it won't be fast enough. I mean, the write speeds on this drive is not super fast. It's much faster read speed.
That's pretty fast. 2,300 read.
Yep.
That's 20 gigabit, right?
Well, in excess of 20 gigabits per second, obviously.
In excess.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Is that because you're connecting through the dock, or is it? Would they do the same if you connected it directly?
I can connect it directly, and you should be able to get the same. Let me just stop it here. Oops. Monitor.
I love this kind of bandwidth. I wish I would do a bunch of work that required so much bandwidth, because high-end video editing does require bandwidth, but 2,300 megabytes per second is a lot.
It just starts slow, then afterwards.
Oh, it gets the whole same.
So it's gone up to 16 on the other port directly. It's about the same speed on the reads.
It looks even faster, no?
24, it was 23, it's 24 now, yeah.
Yeah, slightly more.
Nice. And what might you get if you connect that one to the MacBook M1? So you're really kept
software. I don't have it on the MacBook right now.
Yeah, okay.
I will get it and I can send you a screenshot of that.
But it might not be the same. Well, it could be.
Let's assume it's going to be pretty much the same.
It's pretty much on the same.
I mean, it's a matter of silicon implementation differences that are probably subtle.
Yeah, we're featuring a very cool demo on the new USB4 technology that Raman will walk us through. Obviously, USB4 is fairly new. We released the spec a year ago, September of last year, and products have started to enter the market in Q4 of last year. And obviously, we're now able to deliver up to 40 gigabit per second data rates over a full-featured USB Type-C cable and connector, with a roadmap to go to 80 gigabits per second. And USB4 has the ability to run multiple protocols all simultaneously over one giant pipe, which those protocols are PCI Express, USB4, USB 3.2, DisplayPort, I take that, DisplayPort, USB 3.2, USB 2.0, and Thunderbolt. So this is really great. All of these DisplayPort and PCI Express are tunneled with their own tunnels. And again, a USB 4 host has the ability to allocate, the requirements accordingly. So this is a great technology for the industry, for high data rate, applications. And I think we'll turn it over to Raman and let him actually show you the demo.
This is really awesome. Right now I'm testing out the MacBook Air M1. And so that's advertised as having 2 USB 4 ports, right? And it's just mind blowing to think that there's 40 gigabits per second potentially accessible in there. But it's one thing that I'm a little bit confused about is it's not backwards compatible to the 3.2 2x2, is it? Because there's this portable SSD that SanDisk is selling, the Extreme Pro 2000 megabyte per second, but it seems that this is kind of like another kind of technology that maybe is not totally on the USB 4. Am I correct in saying that?
That's, I mean, actually, so it depends on the implementation of the USB 4. So USB 4 can support the USB 3 Gen 2 by 2, the stuff they're talking about, the 20 gigabits per second solution from SanDisk. It just happens to be that the solutions that are there in the market space today only support 10 gigabits per second. when you're tunneling through USB4.
So that's a choice that Apple made when they
When they-
spec their product development for this particular computer.
So it might be capped at 10 gigabits right there, but how do we get the full 40 gigabit?
The
Well,
full 40 gigabits per
yeah.
second over USB 3? No, USB 3 is
Over
limited.
the USB 4, right? Does it?
USB4, yeah, it is. And actually, the demonstration here actually shows a, USB 4. They got a laptop with USB 4 on it, Dell XPS, 40 gigabits per second, connected to an OWC. Oops.
Something fell.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
I'll move it back up. But yeah, so it's connected to an OWC dock, which is capable of doing 40 gigabits per second upstream and downstream. And then to this, I've attached a 10 gigabits per second USB 3.2 drive and this LG monitor. It's a 5K monitor. So I'm running this video out there, obviously, a 5K video out there. At the same time, I'm going to start this a read and write to this drive at the same time. There we go. So as you can see right now, this is a 10 gigabit drive. So that's about 1,000 megabytes per second, right? And we're able to reach about 950 megabytes per second reads and writes to that drive at the same time that we're doing the display out to the LG as well.
If you did have one of those 20 gigabit drives, would it work on that setup?
On this setup, no, because this setup also supports only 10 gigabits tunneling. But if you did 20 gigabits tunneling, you would be able to get faster drive performance. Now, we are getting another drive, which is a Thunderbolt 3 drive, where you will see in excess of 2,000 megabytes per second at the same time. And it'll happen in a little bit. It's still on its way right now, is what I've heard.
Whoa, so actually what's happening is actually Thunderbolt 3 is kind of become part of the USB 4 spec. Is that correct when I'm thinking here?
Yeah, Thunderbolt 3 or Thunderbolt, the protocol was contributed by Intel to the USB 4 promoter group. Obviously, Intel's part of the promoter group, and they contributed the Thunderbolt protocol to serve as the baseline for USB 4, which has additional features built on top of it. So, yes, Thunderbolt now is kind of the underpinnings of USB 4. But USB 4 has features and benefits above and beyond that baseline.
Because until now, whatever Intel basically Thunderbolt was doing was separate. But now, maybe I'm just guessing here, but maybe there was some kind of pressure or some kind of encouragement from the Apple when they wanted to, something happened, right? Behind the scenes, I guess.
That's not privy to what the USB org knows, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, we wouldn't comment on that. I think, Thunderbolt was a proprietary specification from Intel, and that comes with its own, set of circumstances. USB 4 is an open industry standard with a supporting compliance program and logo program. And, those are really kind of the differences, right?
But so, USB 4 sounds so awesome. Does that mean that, am I correct in thinking that maybe the chipsets and stuff that supported the Thunderbolt was maybe only Intel before, but now it's open to the whole bunch of different chip makers, or not really?
Well, again, I can't comment for Intel. I mean, obviously the host silicon was from Intel. I don't know about the.
Okay, so let me add some clarity here. In the Thunderbolt 3 days, Intel built the silicon that went into the PC, and they built the silicon that went into the Thunderbolt 3 docks and devices. The USB 4 specification includes within it the definition of how to make a USB 4 solution that is backward compatible to Thunderbolt 3. So the now open standard spec tells the industry, other than even Intel, how to build Thunderbolt 3 compatible host silicon and how to build Thunderbolt 3 compatible device silicon. So yes, it's now open standard, defined by the USB 4 spec, published through the USB implementers form, and we have a compliance program to go with all that. So in effect, we brought the Thunderbolt 3 technology out to the public as an open specification.
And when what you were saying before, you were saying now it's a 40 gigabit USB4, but the roadmap is going up to 80 gigabit.
So what Jeff was saying is that the architecture is designed to scale. And it is our intention that in the future, we don't want USB to stay stagnant, right? We want it to continue to grow performance-wise. So that's all been pre-planned into the architecture. And that'll come with a new release of the USB4 spec sometime in the future.
It sounds just so amazing. 40 gigabits is just so much bandwidth. Like those new M1 MacBooks are talking about having 2,600 megabyte SSDs internally, right? Kind of. But what you're talking about, 40 gigabit, is actually faster, potentially an external device that could be even faster than those crazy fast SSDs that they're talking about internal, right? So potentially that's possible.
Well, obviously you have to have a place to move the data to.
Yeah. What I'm wondering is, as these super high bandwidth, is there some considerations that are like totally new considerations in terms of heat generation? People have to be careful how they design those external drives to not burn up or something. It's so much bandwidth.
There's definitely, I mean, thermal considerations is something that people have to take into account when you're moving at these kind of speeds, no question. And people are doing it. They've done it before. I mean, the 40 gigabits per second is not new. It's been there with Thunderbolt 3, right? And so people have learned some of the lessons there. In terms of usages, yeah, I mean, a lot of people do use external drives, two external drives, and you're doing editing on them and you're doing completely everything external, not even moving it at all to the internal drive whatsoever. So it doesn't matter what your internal drive is capable of doing. If you're able to move the data, from your work units and on external, two external drives at 40 gigs, reading from one and writing to another one as you create, video editing, whatever, those things are all capable. You're all capable of doing all this stuff, and primarily the people who are doing that kind of high bandwidth, high data rate stuff are working not with small products like this. They're working with towers, right, which have heat dissipation taken into account and other things of that nature. So you won't really see somebody doing high-end video editing with a drive of this size, right? It's doing with towers.
When I'm checking all these YouTube videos, and one thing I want to try to figure out myself with the MacBook M1 series, which is like crazy big popular topic on YouTube, is that there is a spec where people can buy just 256 gigabyte internal, but I want to figure out if it makes more sense to just buy a huge external SSD and do actually high-end video editing on the external SSD. And now, hopefully, it actually performs nearly as good as having the internal,
It will be as good. And we have demonstrations where we have moved in excess of 2,700 megabytes per second with external drives.
So that's because it's a Thunderbolt 3 drive, or
USB. I mean, it's basically a USB4 drive as well. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
USB4 drive.
Same thing. Yeah.
Same thing. It just happens to be that one happens to be Thunderbolt 3, but there are Thunderbolt USB4 and Thunderbolt 3 are Thunderbolt 3 is proprietary. Yeah. USB4 is the open implementation of a Thunderbolt 3 product. So you will be able to get in excess of 2,700 megabytes per second with those things. They don't use USB to be tunneled. They do PCIe, NVMe based drives, but they still are USB4 drives.
So NVMe based drives is the thing you would need to do to get to those speeds, right? There's no other way.
Primarily today, that's what people are using.
And are there any portable USB powered drives that do this, or is it just a bigger drive that's plugged in and everything?
There are, and I wish I don't know how far away it is and how much time you have, but yeah, we have a bus powered drive that's capable of doing 2,100 megabytes per second.
Wow. So that means you're also getting a lot of power through that USB4 port. How much power is possible?
So these portable drives are expected to work with 15 watts of power, not more than that. 15 watts and below. They have to work. You cannot create a drive that is portable that requires more than 15 watts of power. That will not work because you're not guaranteed. Now this dock will give you more than 15 watts of power, but the laptop, for example, is going to curtail it to between 7.5 and 15 watts of power.
because that may also be one of the bottlenecks in terms of the bandwidth that you might be able to get. If the external drive doesn't get enough power, maybe that's not going to get the
Now
full
the external
bandwidth.
drive, the external drive can also be, you know, self-powered, right? Like a classical, if you bought a tower, it's probably got a wall, you know, an input from the wall. Isn't necessarily expecting to use the power over the USB Type-C connector. The portable one that Ramon was showing does. But if I'm in a studio or setup, I may have a drive that does, like you say, demand a lot of performance and power. And I'll just hook it up like I typically would have done before with a USB 3 drive.
And that setup that you have right there is the XPS 13.
Yeah.
Does it have the exact same USB 4 port that my MacBook Air M1 has?
It has the signaling over it, and it's got different hardware inside, obviously, right? It's using Apple Silicon versus actually
Intel.
So I'm gonna go ahead and connect your disconnect this. So all I'm doing is taking that guy off.
So that's the M1 MacBook Air or Pro?
This is the Pro.
And so those two devices have the exact same functionalities of the USB 4, right?
There we are. The same, everything, it's working, all the stuff that you see. It's now driving the same monitor through the same dock. And I didn't do anything. All I did was plug it in with.
And you were saying that particular dock can only get 10 gigabits through. Is there some solution?
USB is only 10 gigabits.
Do you know any solution that's a dock that has the full bandwidth of a USB 4?
The current solutions are all limiting USB tunneling to 10 gigabits. There are 40 gigabits throughput on USB 4.
But it's being shared between the display and the storage and such.
But is there there's no docks yet that can do the whole 40 gigabit?
There is no dock and there's no spec right now that allows you to do more than 20 gigabits of USB. Even if you can create a dock, the fastest USB tunneling you can do is 20 gigs, because that's the spec limitation right now in a 40 gig USB 4 solution.
So
equivalent of a USB 3.2
2x2 support. But this particular dock, which is actually quite popular, I forgot what it's called, is not supporting the 20 gigabit, right?
No, it does 10 gigabits per second.
It does, right.
10 gigabits per second. Not
10, okay. So I would still need to scour the web and try to find one that does the USB 3.2 bandwidth over USB 4. I'm not totally sure. I hope I'll find something.
You won't find one when we find one, we'll
so it's eventually, it might come actually quite soon, because there's probably a lot of demand for this stuff, right?
So we expect it to happen this year for sure. You will see solutions that do 20 gigabits per second of USB.
Another thing that I'm wondering is, because this MacBook has two Type-C ports, and I saw somewhere on the internet, I think from the guys who do this dock, they checked it out and they said there's two buses in there. So that means actually there's 2 times 40 gigabit potential, what's it called?
We haven't tested it myself. I haven't tested it myself, and we haven't done the thing to check whether it can do 40 gigabits simultaneously on both. I wouldn't be surprised if it does, but we haven't tested it out.
Does that make sense to then imagine or dream about a dock that might actually use both ports to do something in 80 gigabits somehow, and do a whole bunch of other stuff?
People have been creative in the past, and you can't keep it. You never know what somebody might come up with. Right.
I'm sure the dock people are very busy doing a whole bunch of stuff right now, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's creation tools that take and spread data over multiple drives just to get that effective over a higher bandwidth. And, obviously right now it's limited to only 10 or maybe 20 on an individual drive basis, but creative people.
All right. Okay, so as I understand, if I plug in my USB 3.2 2x2 drive directly to my MacBook M1, it's going to get the same bandwidth as if I plug it to that dock you're showing over there, right?
This drive?
Yeah. If I plugged in a 2000 megabyte drive.
Right. I believe that the MacBook supports only 10 gigabits USB right now, natively as well.
That might actually just be some kind of firmware thing, or it's just, I guess that's limited.
Hardware. It's limited by hardware.
Yeah. All right.
So,
Cool.
yeah, as opposed to a Thunderbolt drive, Ramon, right?
The Thunderbolt drive, it will run up to 40 gigabits per second.
That's
Yeah,
that's more than a 2100 you were talking about, right?
Well, with that drive, if I connect it behind the OWC or connect it directly to the MacBook Pro or to the Dell, I'll get the same 2100 because that's the limitation of the drive. The NVMe storage on there is limited to 2100 megabytes per second.
Okay, but potentially somebody could make one that's even faster.
Yes, we could make one that's faster. The fastest ones we know are about 3000 megabytes per second. That's the fastest we know.
So
Nice.
I think the other thing you need to keep in the back of your mind, right, is USB supports 20 gigabit per second solution and a 40 gigabit per second solution. So while some companies have implemented the USB 3.2 2x2, I'm not sure how much volume there's going to be in that when people want to move to USB 4, and they can do 20 gigabits right out of the chute with USB 4, right? So I think you need to think about what choices are going to be made to support 20 gigabit per second levels, right?
So is it possible that the Dell XPS has a faster support than because it's an Intel than the Apple Silicon one? Or that's maybe you might not be able to answer that one. Maybe.
We don't have a way to know, do we?
They're both USB 40 gigs, USB 4 solutions.
I mean, we only see what you can see through that interface by hooking up a drive. We don't have insight into the actual implementations.
And there's some talk on the internet that people are sorry, I talk about this specific product, but it's so popular. You know, the MacBook M1, it only does one external display, but some people are doing this display link to get even more displays. Are you doing any kind of talking with the display link stuff, or that's just a totally different
company?
Display
link, or do you mean DP alt mode?
I think it's called display link, isn't it? Like the one that does display over USB.
That's
right?
the
And they have up to 6 external displays, right? This.
Yeah, they're doing that. I mean, that is still a limitation that there is there with. It depends. I mean, the Dell, for example, will run 2 displays of this size, right? And it also depends on the if you do a 6K display, only one display will be able to be driven at 6K. But that's all dependent on the capability of your platform.
So the USB 4 supports 4 8K displays, right? Oh, I'm joking, but what's the limit? Is there a limit?
8K display or 2 4K displays.
All right, 1 8K at 30.
At 30. Yeah.
At 30. All right. So 8K at 120, then we have to wait for USB 4.1.
Whatever that is, right?
Okay. All right. But thanks a lot. Thanks for this demonstration here at the CES 2021.
Okay.
Online digital experience.
Thanks for joining us. It's always good to see you.
Nice to see you. Thanks a lot.